Josh mentioned something interesting. He was saying that in this kind of digital work age where people are working remotely or hybrid and we have less physical contact with each other, it's harder to get that level of feedback on a consistent basis as far as how you're doing and what people's expectations are. What are some ways to kind of collect that information as far as how people see you, people that you work with, or people that you work adjacent to? What are some methods or some ways that you can take advantage of in a digital environment or a virtual environment to kind of help with that feedback loop?
I mean, I think for sure, just calendaring one-on-ones is one of it sounds so simple, but, just regularly doing one-on-ones is something that makes a big difference. I myself don't do it enough. And I'd like to do that more, but it's not like this is where I want the benefits of psych safety, but I'm not always like that excited about doing all the hard work. Frankly, it's hard. You're pulled in so many different directions, in a position of power, and you have to make this abstract calculation that, how do I spend my time, and that this stuff really matters. So it's more important than the sale. Maybe it's as important as the sales call, or maybe it's more important than that marketing meeting, to get that time in. So it's really a recognition, I think, that takes a while to realize. The tools are there. Like, you can do these Zoom calls and video calls. You can schedule meetings. You can, create, surveys for people to figure out, are they feeling psychologically safe, and survey people regularly, anonymously, right? To figure out what degree of it is present or not present. Tara has done the psychological safety index. Maybe you could speak about that. She's done that here at Industrial Logic and with many clients.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to touch on the psych safety index. And one other thing though, Josh, that I love that you said was, like, you recognize that sometimes you don't do it right. Like, I think it's such an important thing that those of us, again, all of us in positions of power, we recognize, like, we're not always good at it. There have been so many times where I've rescheduled one-on-ones and I've just thought, do you have to reschedule this, or can you make time? Is this a good investment of your time? And the answer pretty much all the time is yes, it is. And what Josh mentioned about the psychological safety index. So the Psychological Safety Index is something that was co-created by Amy Edmondson through the Fearless organization, that myself and Matthew Carlson, who also works at Industrial Logic, was certified with, to actually go in and measure the psychological safety of teams. As a UX research nerd, I will also say that number is just a snapshot in time. And so it can be subjective. It depends on how you feel that day. What sort of things have you experienced that day? Did you just have a blow up with somebody on your team? Is your boss not your favorite person right now? And that's going to be reflected in the answer and what that number is. I really wanted to get that certification because I'm not a big certification human, because I knew that sometimes you need numbers to get executives to listen, and it works. And number two, it's the conversation behind the numbers. It's not really about, it is about the numbers, but it isn't. It's like, okay, so we've scored 60 out of 100. Well, what does that mean? Well, I can tell you what the average is by folks who have taken this quiz, but that's really neither here nor there. Let's figure out what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and then come out of that with a plan of how do we want to attempt to actually change the way that we're working together. And the most important part of those psych safety survey debriefs, it's 2 hours sitting with this team, is that the leader's there. And we create a safe container to say, okay, this is this person in a position of power. This is what they're expecting. So going back to expectations, they'll say, my expectation is that I really want you all to be as honest as you possibly can about the challenges that we have so we can make improvements. If a leader is there, it means that they care enough to want to improve things. And that's why things like the Psych Safety Index are so powerful. I just finished one up. I'm working on a large engagement with many, many folks doing these, an organization. And I had somebody say to their manager, I really appreciate that you're actually taking the time to do something like this, because it means that you recognize that there are things that we can all improve together, that you are not solely responsible. Like, they recognize that person's in a position of power, But they also know that the boss can't just come in and fix everything. It's really that group effort of creating the psychological safety in the environment.